you'd have to start with the characteristics you're interested in. So you have to choose a system, like a forest or something, and then you could choose the defining characteristics, say something about the tree cover, you know, the species, the size of the trees, the percent of tree cover.
Right, okay, so if we're looking at trees, we have percent of tree cover.
Species.
Species.
Right,
Diversity. What's just one other thing I was mentioning? I thought I heard.
canopy, cover, I mean, I don't know, the canopy can change even if there's still.
Maybe some measure of functional diversity.
Disparity, that's what I was talking about, species at the higher levels, you know.
So we'd have all these different things that we want to be measuring with respect to resilience. So it's going to lead itself into this issue of being a multiplier indicator. We have all these different sort of aspects of it that we want to include on a survey. And then the recreation experience, it becomes this process of fulfilling these unmet needs. The theory was actually borrowed from industrial psychology. It's borrowed from the expectancy and balance theory from Elvin and Waller. And so what these researchers did, so their construct is that people have these motivations for recreation, is driven through the process of trying to meet these needs we might engage in recreation activity. And they hypothesized that there would be several different types of motivations that might be identified. So the process of meeting these needs is referred to as recreation motivation. So these items that are numbered, so if you're on the side of the handout that says on top ferment, beta, or driver, or parent, in that box you'll see a bunch of things that are numbered. So for example, reinforcing self-image, social recognition, skill development, competence testing, excitement, endurance, telling others. Those are the constructs of motivation. They're saying, okay, there's something out there that exists where people might be motivated by reinforcing self-image. That might be a reason people might engage in recreation. Or they might engage in recreation to have some sense of social recognition, or to develop skills or competence. Those bulleted items then, those are the variables, the questions that they would use to measure reinforcing self-image. And likewise, under 2, social recognition, those would be the bullets that they would use to measure social recognition. So, sort of in this social, how we model this, the items in the circles, in the red circles, those are the constructs. And so that's what they're hypothesizing exists. And the items in the blue boxes, those are the variables that we would measure to make inferences about our constructs. And I just took the top 2 if there was more than 2 inputs in the boxes. So we're saying we're measuring reinforcing self-image, and we're doing it through the use of those variables in that blue box. And then they would say that these are similar and they fit together under this larger umbrella of achievement and stimulation. So you'll see there's these statements in all caps that sort of fit above different numbered items. So this is a domain of sort of different scales underneath it. Reinforcing self-image, it's also referred to as a scale because it's made up of several variables to measure that construct. So we're making these statements about what we think reality is like. We're using variables to measure those statements, and then we can farther model our different ideas of reality. But going from something that we can measure on a survey to these abstract images, or abstract instructions. Any questions on that? Okay, so I guess the issue then is, how do we know that we've measured something about reinforcing self-image or achievement and stimulation? So we have all these different things that we have responses to on the survey, but how can we be confident that it means anything about reinforcing self-image or skill development? That's where the issue of reliability and validity comes into play. Being able to provide evidence that what we think we're measuring, provide evidence that we're measuring what we think we're measuring. And so that's what I'll discuss next. First I'll talk about reliability, and then we'll talk about validity. So with respect to reliability, we can think about it in terms of study reliability, which is the repeatability of our findings. So if we conduct a study, if we were to administer it again, if what we're measuring doesn't change, would we come up with similar results? And we can also think about it in terms of measurement reliability, which would be the consistency of responses to a set of questions that measure a given construct or concept. And so different methods that we know about assessing reliability of a survey. There's a method called the test retest method. Yeah.
So could you go measurement reliability again?
Yeah. So that's where we're concerned about specific questions that are measuring one construct. So rather than the entire study, maybe it's just 4 questions that are intended to measure motivation for recreation or what that does meditation.
So would that be like, for example, if I basically asked the same thing twice to see if I was coming out with similar answers? Is that how you might check something like that, or?
Yeah.
I mean, how I know that people are understanding. Is that what it means?
Yeah. So we could do just that, and it's called the test retest reliability measure. So we could administer the same survey to individuals at 2 points in time, and then we correlate the results. So if today we give someone a survey, we might administer that same survey to them at some point in the future and see how closely the results match. And so we could do that, with an entire study, or maybe it's just specific questions that we're interested in.
How realistic is that to do in practice? Like, how many people are willing to take an identical survey a second time?
I think it's a problem. And maybe in some lab situations or something, we could control for that. If we have like a psychology class and students are required to participate in research as experiments as part of their grade, then they're going to do it. But for a lot of the things that we do, it's a little more difficult to assess that. And I think people might get, if we sent out a survey to someone, they filled it out, we sent out the same thing again, and at some point in time, they might not be so happy with that. And even if we could, there might be some instances where we could do that. Let's say we're doing an on-site survey of recreationists. It would be pretty difficult to even be able to do that at another point in time. Maybe we can get their name and address and send it to them again, but it would be kind of prohibitive to do the test retest method on that sort of population.
I have a question
Yeah.
related to that. It seems to me that I've encountered some surveys, like maybe that I've taken, where it seems like some of the questions are repetitious.
Right.
Like they're asking just a slight variant to the same thing, or they're just recasting.
Yeah.
Are those surveys kind of doing that internally?
Yeah. And in fact, it'll be 3 slides. So hold that question for a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you decide the time period between rerunning the survey, or running it initially and then rerunning it?
That would be kind of tricky, because there'd be a couple issues that